Morning, everyone.
Good
Good
morning,
morning,
Rabbi.
Rabbi.
We are learning Mishnah Shabbos, Perek Aleph, chapter 11, Mishnah Vav, Mishnah 6. I'd like to dedicate this morning's learning in memory of my mother, Mrs. Shlomo Rabinowitz, Shlomo Spas Rabbi Yaakov Eliezer. Our learning should be an aliyah for her neshama.
Amen.
Okay, now, when it comes to bringing a carbon chatas, a sin offering, you only bring a sin offering if you sinned inadvertently, which means you forgot it was Shabbos, or you forgot that this act is forbidden to do on Shabbos. And inadvertently, you did something you weren't allowed to do on Shabbos. That is when you bring a carbon chatas, a sin offering. So that with that, the Mishnah says like this: Hazayrik. Somebody is throwing something. He's throwing something from a private domain to a public domain. Okay. Now, when he started throwing it, he forgot it was Shabbos. So he threw it, meaning he picked it. Don't forget, right? Very important to remember that when it comes to the act of haitzah, transferring, it starts with picking it up from the public from one domain, and then having it be put down in the next domain. In the case of throwing, I pick up the article, let's say from the private domain, I throw it, it lands in the public domain. I now have performed the forbidden act of haitzah. Now, in the case of the Mishnah, it goes like this: Hazayrik, he threw it. When he threw it, he forgot it was Shabbos. And after it leaves his hand, he goes, whoop, Shabbos. That's one case. Kolata acher, you threw it, right? And somebody else snatched it out of the air. Mm-hmm. And you threw it to land, mm-hmm. right? And instead, somebody came and caught it. Mm-hmm. Kolata kelef. Or let's say you threw it, and what snatched it out of the air? A dog. Dog jumped up, snapped it, and caught it in its mouth. Or somehow or another, before it landed, it burned up. Burned up. It was hit by a lightning bolt. I don't know what, but it got burned up. All right. So these are the three cases so far. Actually, four cases. You have throwing. When you first threw it, you thought you forgot it was Shabbos. After it left your hand, meaning when you picked it up, you bit the akira. You lifted it up. You forgot it was Shabbos. You threw it, and before it came to land, you remembered it was Shabbos. That's case number one. Case number two was you threw it, and somebody else or a dog snatched it out of the air, meaning it didn't land because of it didn't come to rest, to rest on the next domain due to your act. And the third case is it got burned up. Putter. In all these cases, you're putter. So let's go through each one. In the first case, the reason you're putter is because, yes, it did land on, let's say you threw it from the private domain to the public domain. It landed in the public domain. But by the time it landed in the public domain, right, you remembered it wasn't Shabbos. You remembered it was Shabbos. So that means the beginning of my act was done bishgaga, inadvertently. But by the time it landed, which is the completion of the act, I remembered it was Shabbos. So as we're going to see soon at the end of the Mishnah, it's going to say it explicitly. In order to be liable a sin offering, it's got to be inadvertent from at the beginning, and at the end. And in this case, at the end, it wasn't inadvertent because you remembered it was Shabbos by the end. Okay. The next case was somebody snatched it out. Okay. All right. So you picked it up, you threw it. When the other person caught it, is that considered that the article came to rest? Yeah, it came to rest. But who made it rest? Somebody else. This is an example of two people doing one forbidden act of Shabbos together. And we learned previously that when that happens, no one is liable as an offering. In the case where he went out and he threw it and a dog caught it, right? So there, it's interesting. There, the reason that's given is because there's a halacha that when the article comes to rest, or even when you pick it up, or when it comes to rest, it's got to come to rest on an area that's 4 by 4 tefachim. By the dog, its mouth is not 4 by 4 tefachim, or it's not considered a place that's 4 by 4 tefachim. Okay, so it's not 4 by 4 tefachim. Okay, so therefore it didn't come to rest in that on the kind of area that you'd be liable for it coming to rest upon. And then the case where it got burnt up in the air never came to rest. So in all these cases, we say, Pater, you're exempt. Next case, similar.
Not the Pater from the Torah? Or
You're Pater from the Torah. That means there's no carbon chatz, no sin offering.
Okay. Intention doesn't play a part. He intended it to come to rest, but a dog snatched it.
So what's your question?
Does intention play a part?
Because you mean what? It didn't. You
He
mean
intended for it to come to rest.
on the ground,
Yeah.
and instead it came to rest in the dog's mouth.
Well, the dog interfered with, didn't allow his intention to be complete.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a very good question. Could you ask the same question when the other person snatched it?
Well, if it wasn't intended that he snatched it, yes.
Right. So what if the case is that he did intend for them to snatch it?
Well, then it's two people doing the act together.
Then the case of the man is two people doing the act together. In the case of the animal, for some reason, I don't call it two people doing the act together. I'm not sure why. Two things doing the act together. The other reason is because it's not a makom dalad al dalad. I'm not sure why they don't use the same reason.
Well, the man's hand, if it's a second man, his hand is not 4x4.
But that's the Gemara says that your hand is considered 4x4. Okay. Next case. Very similar case, but here the question of the desecration of Shabbos is not about transferring from one domain to the other, but it's about making a wound on Shabbos. Basically, if I hit you on Shabbos and that causes you to get a wound, which means basically to get a black and blue mark, that means blood built up under your skin, that's called desecrating Shabbos. It's a tolda of sheichet, of slaughtering. So you cannot wound someone on Shabbos. You should never wound someone, right?
You have to wait until.
But let's put it this way: you should never wound someone. But on Shabbos, you're also desecrating Shabbos when you do that. So if you inadvertently wound someone on Shabbos, you should have to bring a sin offering, right? You should have to bring a carbon chatas. So Mishna says like this: Zarak lasais chabura. You threw an object to wound, bein ba'adam bein b'behema, whether it be to wound a person or an animal. V'niskat shaloi nasa chabura. So when you threw it, you forgot it was Shabbos. It leaves your hand, and you say Shabbos, and meaning you remembered it was Shabbos before it made the wound. I mean, before it actually did the act, before the act was completed, you remembered it was Shabbos. Pater, you're exempt from a sin offering because the beginning was inadvertent, but then it wasn't. Zaklal, this is the rule. Kol chayave chatois. All people who would be liable to bring a sin offering. Einan chayav and not liable at shetahei tchilasen v'seif and shkaga. Until you have the beginning, they're not going to be liable until you have the beginning and the end being inadvertent. Tchilas and shkaga v'seif and zadan. If the beginning is inadvertent, but the end is intentional, at the beginning you forgot it was Shabbos. By the time it was completed, you remember it was Shabbos. Tchilas and zadan v'seif and shkaga. It started off intentional. You knew it was Shabbos. You're doing it anyway. By the time it ended, you kind of, you forgot. Peturin, you are going to be exempt. Until the beginning and the end are inadvertent. Now, the reason that the Mishnah has to repeat this in length, because, you can, first of all, we get that from the first half of the Mishnah. And even when the Mishnah says, this is the rule, it says it in a very lengthy way. So the Mefarshim explain the reason why it's doing it this way is the following reason. All right, let's say in the case where you threw something, right? You threw it, you forgot it was Shabbos. Okay? In the middle, then it left your hand, and you remember it was Shabbos. And then by the time it landed, you forgot about Shabbos again. So the ends, meaning the beginning and the end, are inadvertent, but the middle is intentional. The halacha is you are liable. You'll be chayiv carbon chatas. As long as the beginning is inadvertent and the end is inadvertent, you'll be liable to carbon chatas, even if the middle was intentional. That is the point of the Mishnah at the end, repeating all this.
Try that on me again.
Again, you start off, as long as you start off inadvertent, the beginning of the act is inadvertent, and the end of the act is inadvertent, even if in the middle You remembered it was Shabbos. You threw something, right? You threw it 10 amas. Okay. When you threw it, you forgot it was Shabbos, right? As it's flying through the air, you're like, oh, Shabbos. And then by the time it lands, you forgot Shabbos. So it's Akira was with Shabbos, right? When he picked it up, he forgot it was Shabbos. When it made Hanach, when it came to rest, he forgot it was Shabbos. But in the middle, as it was traveling, you remember it was Shabbos. What's the din then? You are chayiv a carbon chatas, because that's called the beginning and the end was inadvertent. Even if the middle was not inadvertent, it was intentional. As long as the beginning and the end is inadvertent, you'll be chayiv a carbon chatas. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Rabbi.
Rabbi.